Great. I just heard the recording thing, so we can go ahead and get started. So today I'm talking about direct-to-consumer meat sales. Just a show of hands, like a thumbs up or anything like that. Do you guys have livestock that you're thinking about selling direct-to-consumer? Maybe not.
Nope.
Couple people, okay. I was gonna say this is gonna be a really boring hour for you guys, but JJ is coming up after me, so he'll be talking about marketing in general. So stay tuned if you're not a livestock person. We have a little bit of something for everyone tonight. Okay, so just a little starter here, and this is really applying to anything. I have started going over this because we have a new website and it's a little bit difficult to navigate. So if you are looking for something like a specific program, if you go Google OK State Extension, this comes up. Then you go to Programs and Services, and there's a list of like A to Z, all the programs. Today we're talking about direct-to-consumer meat sales and small-scale slaughter. So that is the program that you would select. And there's a web page, and this web page has all of the fact sheets that we have, all of the tools that we have. If there's any kind of YouTube video describing something, it will be on this program page. So if you're interested in backyard chickens or vegetables or anything like that, there's a bunch of things listed on that A through Z list. Okay, so first things that you need to consider if you're even thinking about direct-to-consumer. The first thing is, do you know the rules? And we're going to be going over a lot of those rules today. There are some inspection rules, some selling rules, some different things that you need to be aware of before you start doing direct-to-consumer meat sales. And first of all, do you have a marketing plan? So if you choose to do direct-to-consumer, you don't necessarily have to sell every single animal you have direct to consumer. You may make the choice to sell only your steers direct to consumer, or maybe only cull animals direct to consumer. Whatever your strategy is, the main thing I want everyone to do is have a plan. And that's the marketing plan. And JJ will go over more marketing options in the second hour. And then how will you sell your meat? So if you sell your meat where you're selling individual cuts, that means that you have to have storage. So do you have freezer space? Can you get the animals processed? So unfortunately, one of the biggest hurdles for most people, especially in some parts of the state, it's finding the right kind of inspection at a slaughter facility that actually has capacity to take your animals. The other hurdle is there demand? So what I mean by that is if you're selling direct to consumer, you are not going to compete with Walmart on pricing, right? So you're not going to be the cheapest meat around. What you're providing is something special and different. It's local. You're selling your story. So you're providing something, and because you have higher costs, you're going to have to charge more. And because of that, you need to make sure that there's demand for your product. So there is a segment of consumers that are just very price sensitive. They go to the store, they buy the cheapest meat they can find. Those are not going to be the consumers that are interested in direct-to-consumer meat sales. They're not going to be interested in your story. They're not going to care about the local piece. So making sure that there's demand. If you live near Oklahoma City and Tulsa, there's probably demand there, but for other people throughout the state, there may be less demand. And then do you know the quality of the meat from your cattle? So I know everyone believes that they have the best cattle, and some of you probably do, but making sure that you've actually slaughtered, fed out, and slaughtered one of your animals, and you know what the quality of your animals is like, is super important. And then is it worth it to you? So time is money. Do you enjoy it? So if you're the kind of person that really wants to just stay on the ranch, you don't want to talk to consumers, you don't want to sit at the farmer's market, you don't want to have to run a website or do any of those things, then this may not be a good fit for you. And then, of course, consider liability insurance, because you are selling a product direct to consumers. If something happens, you want to make sure that you are covered. So this table is a little bit confusing. In red is really the most important part to you guys. So there are 4 main types of slaughter facilities. There's federally inspected, state inspected, custom exempt, and Talmadge-Aiken or TA Act plants. And this type of inspection dictates how you can sell your meat. So custom exempt means your meat cannot be sold or donated. It must be consumed by family or non-paying guests of the owner of the livestock. And we will go more into custom exempt and kind of the loophole that allows you to sell a custom exempt animal direct to consumers. And that loophole is that you sell them the live animal. And so this is when people buy a half, a whole, a quarter steer or heifer that is typically custom exempt. So basically you cannot sell individual cuts of meat because you sold a portion of the live animal. State inspected, it's pretty clear. You can sell the product within the state of Oklahoma. Federally inspected, the product can be sold and shipped globally. The state inspected piece is a little bit tricky if you live on the border with Texas or one of the other states. The TA Act, the Talmadge-Aiken Act, that allows the product to be sold and shipped nationally. So that acts like federal inspection, but there are some restrictions for global. So finding a processor, this is a huge hurdle for a lot of people. So first you need to know when your animals will be ready for slaughter. You will likely have to book a slaughter date in advance. And unfortunately, you may not have a processor near you that has the type of slaughter you need. So if you want to sell individual cuts of meat, you need to be state, federally, or TA inspected. And if you don't have a processor near you that offers those things, then you're either going to be trucking pretty far or it's just not an option for you. So if you're doing custom exempt, it is not state or federally inspected. You can sell a quarter, a half, or a whole live animal to a consumer. You then take the already sold live animal to be processed. So basically you're doing the owner of the animal, because you sold the live animal, you're doing the owner of the animal the favor of taking them to the processor. Typically, the processor will not ask for a bill of sale, but they can. So just be prepared with that if you come to the processor, the custom exempt, they have every right to say, I need to see a bill of sale. And then the customer picks up the meat. And so the end of your transaction is taking the animal to the slaughter facility. Meat can be consumed by the buyer of the live animal and non-paying guests. So if the person you sold the animal to has a bed and breakfast, that's a paying guest, they can't serve them custom exempt meat. And the meat cannot be sold as individual pieces. So if you want to sell just steaks, ribeyes, hamburger meat, custom exempt is not the option that you want. I know this is a lot of information to be getting kind of on Zoom. If you have questions, you can unmute yourself and say it or put it in the chat. I'm sure Lauren's kind of monitoring the chat to make sure. But if you have questions, go ahead and ask them along the way because it's a little easier if the slide's up. Okay, so we've probably all seen this before. This is what it looks like when you have custom exempt meat. It typically has, or it should have, this big thing that says not for sale. It has a label that's made by the processor. It is important to note there's a few different ways to package the meat. So one way is this plastic wrap for a hamburger is pretty common. And then paper wrapping is still done by some people. And then this shrink wrap is very popular because people can actually see the cuts of meat. There has been some issues with shrink wrapping meat that has a bone. Sometimes the bone will perforate the shrink wrap. And so that's just kind of something to be aware of to kind of let the consumer know how their meat is coming. Basically, when it comes to talking to the consumer, the less surprises the consumer has when they pick up their meat, the better off your relationship will be and the more satisfied the customer will be. So a few general considerations for custom exempt. Is there a custom exempt plant near you? Do they process the animal you are selling? Poultry can be really tricky. There are very few plants that slaughter poultry. I've gotten some calls about things like ducks and quail or rabbits. That can be very tricky. There is a website that ODAF hosts that has a drop-down menu of the different slaughter facilities, what kind of inspection they offer, and what kind of animals they slaughter. So that's really helpful. If you need that, let Lauren or myself know and we can get that to you. And then communication with the end buyer is key. So the end buyer is the person that is going to pick up the meat. I know I've heard that there are some people that will deliver their custom exempt meat. I'm just going to put my fingers in my ears and pretend I never heard that. By law, which is what we're going to go over today is the technical law. By law, the end buyer has to pick it up. And so what that may mean for you is when you're picking out a slaughter facility, if all of your buyers are in Oklahoma City, you may want to pick a plant that's actually closer to Oklahoma City than closer to you. So there might be some strategic thinking when you realize that the end consumer is the person that has to pick up the meat. And then, of course, are there enough people interested in a quarter or a half near the processing plant? 100% of the animal must be sold at time of slaughter. It doesn't have to be one person. It can be any combination of buyers. Technically, you can sell like 1/16 of an animal. Typically, when that happens, it's because a family is like coming together to purchase an animal. Most butchers are not going to put up with that. So they will do a quarter, but not less than that. And so it's really recommended that if there are multiple family members that want to go in on a quarter, they pay for the quarter and then they divvy it up themselves. So one person can come and get the meat and then they have a family party and divvy up the meat because that is a lot to deal with. And typically a butcher won't deal with that. Is there an on-farm slaughter exception for poultry as long as you're processing less than 250 turkey equivalents? Yes, that is true. We have a fact sheet coming out listing out all of those rules because it's in turkey equivalent, right? So if you have chickens, that number is different than when you have quail, et cetera, et cetera. So just kind of keep that in mind. B. Goodman, is the end buyer picking up meat the law in all states? Yes, that actually is true. So I'm assuming you have like a Texas border situation going on there. So Mike, let us know if you want the poultry exemption fact sheet as soon as it's out. We can put you on a list. The poultry stuff is very complicated, so I'm not going to be getting into it today. We will cover it if you're coming up to Stillwater for our direct-to-consumer meat sales workshop next week. We'll be covering the poultry part too. Okay. Processor considerations. So I've already said that most of the time you're not going to get a lot of options in terms of picking your processor. If you're really lucky and you have some options, a few things to consider. Are they easy to work with? So like I mentioned, the customer will be contacting the processor to determine the fabrication specifications. And all that means is sometimes like you can give up some roast for additional hamburger, right? So it's how you want that animal cut up. So that's between the consumer and the processor. So that interaction is a little bit out of your control. The customer will be paying the processor for their services. So that is the other big piece. If someone calls you up and says, I want a quarter or a half or a whole steer, the price that you quote them will not include the processing fees. And so sometimes consumers are thrown off when they've paid you and then they go to pick up their meat and there's another bill there. So making sure that they understand the whole process is really important. And then what kind of packaging does the processor use? Some of that's personal preference. And then are they going the extra mile to have nice looking cuts? So are they removing membranes? Are they making sure that their cuts look really nice for the end consumer? So some processor pricing examples. Again, the end consumer is going to be paying this bill, but it is important to be upfront so that they're not surprised by these costs. I have 3 examples, and it's interesting how different processors have slightly different ways of charging kind of the same amount. So FAPSI, their harvest fee is $200 for beef, $100 for pork and lamb. The custom processing is 75 cents, and that includes to cut, to grind, to vacuum pack. Big Country, their harvest fee is $85 for beef, $75 for pork, $160 for goats. Their custom processing fee is a little bit higher at 99 cents. To tenderize or to make patties, that's an additional 75 cents. To cure pork is 85 cents, and the disposal is 15. So even though that harvest fee is lower, the per pound price is higher, and there's a disposal fee. The fatted calf, they have slaughter disposal of $75 for an extra large. For an extra large, there's a fee of $30 on top of the 75. Processing is 90 cents. Quartering is $10. And tenderizing is $3. So just kind of be aware of the pricing. Most people aren't going to have many options in terms of picking a processor. So it is kind of what it is. This is a couple of examples of the sheet that a consumer will have. And this is why it's important that there is a processor that's willing to kind of explain this or maybe answer some questions. They may call you and ask you some questions about, where these steaks are coming from. One example that we like to give a lot is if someone is buying a quarter and they really want a brisket, they need to buy a front quarter and not a back quarter. And so as someone selling direct to consumer, you do need to be somewhat aware of where these different cuts of meat are coming from, especially if you think there's a lot of consumers that are going to be buying quarters of an animal, because that really impacts the options you have in terms of steaks. Dressing percentage. This is something else that I think is really important to talk to an end consumer, because especially if they have not bought directly before a half or a quarter or whole animal, they see a cow and they think it weighs 1,200 pounds and they expect to get 1,200 pounds of meat. And that is just not how it works, right? So you have your dressing percentage. This is the portion of the live animal weight that results in the hot carcass. So it is the hot carcass weight divided by the live animal weight times 100. The hot carcass weight is the weight of the unchilled carcass in pounds after the head, hide, and internal organs have been removed. So this percentage can vary greatly. So typically it's 60 to 64% in beef. I would recommend that if you are doing this, you start keeping track. So you can ask the butcher afterwards, hey, what was our hot carcass weight? What was our dressing percentage? And they can typically give you those numbers. And that is really useful, because if you know that, typically your hot carcass weight is 65%, then you can tell people that if you have really consistent genetics. So your chilled carcass will lose another 2 to 5%, due mostly to moisture loss. So that water evaporates out of the meat. So here's just kind of some general rule of thumb numbers. Again, it's better to actually know your numbers, but for beef cattle, the average dressing percent is 30 or 62. And so that person will be taking home about 35% of the live weight. For hogs, the dressing percentage is typically 73. A home person will be taking 36%. Sheep is 52. You're taking 25% of that animal home. So here's a really nice example of a 1,200 pound live beef animal. The amount of meat that you receive in terms of pounds is also dependent on how you get it cut up. So bones have a weight. So if you get all boneless, you're still getting the same amount of meat, but it's going to weigh less because there's no bones. And sometimes consumers get thrown off by that. So if you get boneless steaks and roasts, you're going to be getting about 425 pounds of freezer meat, compared to bone-in is about 500 pounds. So if you do a mixture, it's about 490 pounds. If you do boneless steaks, but then you have bone-in roast, you're kind of splitting the difference, and that's about 348 pounds. And then if you have animals that are very lean, so this example gives a Holstein or a dairy animal, but I can imagine that some parts of Oklahoma have very strong Brahmin influence. You may actually have a even lower take-home percentage. So if you have a Holstein or dairy animal, you're actually only taking home about 396 pounds of meat for a 1,200 pound animal. So like I mentioned before, it is really important to talk to the consumer about how much meat they will get. Individual animals vary. So if you have a history on how your cattle do, you can actually give that consumer more information. And then freezer space. So it is hard for some consumers that have not purchased a quarter before to visualize how much meat that's going to be. So if you only have the little freezer on top of your refrigerator inside the house, it's probably not enough space to even store a quarter. So typically you need 1 cubic foot of freezer space for every 35 to 40 pounds of meat. So kind of keep that in mind when you're talking to consumers. You might want to throw in, hey, it's roughly this many pounds. Do you have freezer space for that? Are you prepared for that? How to charge. So this is actually one of the easiest ways to calculate because you are selling the live animal. The animal should already be sold when you take it to be processed. This leaves selling by live weight or per head your only option. Again, I know people do things that are not quite by the book. I know, like we mentioned before, some people may pick up the meat or some people may charge by the pound, but I'm going to go over how it's really supposed to be done. So that means you need to know your costs and then the premium you would like to charge. So note what you need to charge to be profitable may be less than what people are willing to pay. So if you're a high cost producer and it's going to pencil out to be you have to charge, $12 a pound or something like that, I don't know very many people that are going to pay that price. So keep that in mind. There is no tax collected on live animal sales. So that's kind of nice. The end consumer will pay the processor. So the slaughter fee, per pound processing fee, and any add-ons. Marketing. You have to be very careful about wording. So you are not selling pounds of meat. So for example, what you can say, and this gets flagged on social media. So just kind of keep this in mind. I am selling a quarter, a half, or a whole beef. The animals are 1,200 pounds. In the past, 1,200 pound animal is about 420 pounds of meat. What you cannot say is I am selling 420 pounds of meat because you're not, you're selling the live animal. So again, social media is a good option, but watch your wording. If you're saying you're selling pounds of meat, but it's custom exempt, you can get in trouble. So farmers markets, some require you to have actual product. Other farmers markets, you can just have a flyer that explains your custom exempt process. So you can just have flyers with pictures of your meat, advertising like I'm doing custom exempt, you're buying the live animal, here's my pricing. Some farmers markets actually require you to have a product. So a flyer explaining your custom exempt is not going to work in that case. And then of course, tell your story. I mean, that's really what people are buying with custom exempt. So your options, if you're doing state, federally, or TA inspected. This meat can be sold as individual pieces. You need to plan ahead on the label, and you may need to include a third party for its creation. Keep in mind that if you get really fancy, they may charge like an individual setup fee for each individual cut of steak. So if the label says ribeye versus T-bone, some of these third parties would consider each one of those a setup fee. Really what you need to do is identify your processor first and then talk to them because they may not even have the capabilities to print off a label. They may say we do checkoff labels. They may say I can slap your logo on it, but not much more. So you are again limited by the way that your processor does labeling. State federally inspected, if you're doing individual pieces of meat, the pricing is a little bit more complicated because you have to figure out how to cover your costs and charge a premium with cuts being different prices. So you can no longer say like, oh, hamburger and ribeye and T-bone and a roast are all the same per pound because in the marketplace, we all know like ribeyes cost more per pound than hamburger. And so you have those relationships between the cost of the individual cuts of meat to also deal with. Okay, so a little bit more on the label. You will work with your processor. So some can do complicated labels. Some can do a checkoff label. And so that would be where they have a few different labels that maybe have 20 different product options. So the label may include all the roasts, and there's like a checkbox or an X next to the cut of meat it is. And so if it's a chuck roast, next to the word chuck roast will be a check mark. And then underneath that'll be arm roast, rib roast, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if your label is simple, it can be approved by plant personnel or the USDA IIC. There are some claims that must be pre-approved by FSIS, the Food Safety Inspection Service. So if you are going to have a really specific label where you make claims, you actually have to go through this process and fill out applications in advance. So what is required on a label? You have to have the product name. You have to have the official inspection legend, including the establishment number. Your processor will have that information. The address line, the net weight or quantity of the product, and then an ingredient statement. I included the word ingredient statement because some people will do sausage or things like that for pork. If you're just doing, hamburger and steaks and not adding other ingredients, you will not need an ingredient statement. That is for if you're making sausage or other things. Claims that require oversight. So if you put any claims about how that animal was raised, including raised without antibiotics, raised without hormones, if you put living condition claims, so free range, pasture ranged, and if you put animal diet claims, so grass fed, grain fed, vegetarian fed, you will need to have that approved in advance. Additional licensing, ODAF licensing is recommended. So we have the certification of registration for distributors, meat brokers, and public warehouses. This is a free license number. Basically, it works in your favor if you have a problem. So if someone says, hey, I ate that hamburger that you sold me at the farmer's market and now I'm sick, it's helpful to have this license so when you go through that process. Rules vary by county health departments. So if you're going to be selling individual cuts direct to consumers, giving the county health department a call and making sure that you have all of your ducks in a row is a really good first step to take. A little bit about farmers markets. Each farmers market has their own rules. And so they may require a county health department certification. It can be really expensive. So I hate to pick on Broken Arrow, but they were the most expensive one I could find. So we're going to pick on them today. They require the Oklahoma Meat Inspection Act documentation. So obviously meat must be processed in a state, federally, or TA inspected processor. So that's not a farmer's market thing. That's just a selling individual cuts thing. There is a cost of a one-time plan review fee of $425. They also have a $425 credentials fee, and they have a $325 annual renew fee. You have to have your certificate of registration for distributors, meat brokers, and public warehousemen from ODAF, which we just discussed, and a mobile retail food establishment credential from OSDH. And they provide the links of where to get all your documentation. So that means your first year at the Broken Arrow Farmers Market is going to cost you $900. So keep that in mind. If you are interested in selling at farmers markets, look up the farmers market you want to go to, make sure that your pricing structure fits in with the fees that are required to go to that farmers market. So additional general considerations for farmers markets. Is there a state, federally, or TA inspected processor near you? So if this is a big barrier for you, then this may not be a good option. Maybe custom exempt would be a better fit. And then, of course, what are the rules for the farmers markets? And then do you have the storage? So you probably are not going to sell out of all of your meat every single time that you process an animal right away, which means that you are going to have freezer space to store this meat while you wait to sell it. And then do you have time to sit at the farmer's market and sell your meat? And then do you have the equipment? So you will have to keep that meat frozen at the farmer's market. It is 106. So short of having a deep freeze at the farmer's market, I'm not really sure how you would handle that this weekend with dry ice. So just keep that in mind. So out of the freezer, this is another option if you have your meat processed in a state, federally, or TA inspected facility. So out of the freezer is kind of a general term for you have the meat at your house and you either are meeting people to exchange the meat, you may be shipping the meat if you have an online store or take phone orders or something like that. So there may be less licensing requirements. Again, you have to call the county health department and double check those things. But the farmers markets can require a lot of different licensing. So if you're selling out of your home, that may be less. If you are shipping, make sure you have the right inspection. So if you have a website and you only have state inspection, there needs to be some kind of trigger so that if somebody goes in there from Texas and tries to have meat shipped to them, it'll tell them, no, you can't do it. A couple of shipping rules. You must use a styrofoam container. These rules are coming from the shipping facility. So this is coming from US Mail, UPS, and FedEx. They're all in agreement on how this has to be packaged. So it must use a styrofoam cooler. It must be kept frozen, and it must be packed with dry ice, not regular ice. I imagine some poor postal worker had to deal with a horrific situation with regular ice and like melted meat goo. So it must be dry ice. Package must be labeled perishable. And the US Mail, UPS, and FedEx all have 2-day shipping options. So there's a little bit more flexibility there in terms of shipping. So from your freezer, some general considerations, there is the potential for less regulation or licensing problems, but it really depends on your health department. And then how are you going to reach your consumers? So are you going to be meeting them? Are you going to be mailing? Are you willing to have people know where you live and come to your house? Do you have the storage capability for processed meat? So you may be sitting on some cuts of meat for quite some time. So do you have the capability to have a bunch of freezers lined up that have your meat in them? Again, communication is always key. The packaging options are really important. If you are selling individual cuts of meat, from everything I've read, vacuum sealed is kind of preferred because people are really used to going to the grocery store and seeing through the film exactly what kind of steak they're buying. And so if you're selling butcher wrapped meat, which you can if it is state or federally or TA inspected, people like to see the meat. And so they may not be as happy with the product that's in the butcher wrapping. And then, of course, pretty cuts of meat. So people will expect the meat to look like it does in the store. I always like to pick on A&M a little bit because my parents actually pay a little bit less money to buy meat from A&M that the students have practiced butchering. And so they get a lot of steaks that are cut at an angle or not cut well or have really various thicknesses or are really inconsistent in sizing. They know what they're getting. They pay less for it. The students get to practice. But if I'm paying top dollar for your steak, I expect it to be very similar to what I get in the grocery store. And again, you may have less options for a packager or for packaging and processing because of the inspection requirements. And there may be only certain days that you can slaughter because they only have the inspector there those days. So it really can be limiting for certain geographical regions. So in general, your marketing plan. So are you selling all of your animals direct to consumer or just some? Which ones? Selling live animals, direct marketing? Are you doing farmers market? What licensing do you need? What additional storage, additional labor? The additional labor piece can be pretty big. So if you are spending time at the farmer's market, if you are taking calls from consumers, if you're doing all these different things, you have to make sure that you have the labor to handle that. And then what do you need to charge? It's not necessarily what you can charge. So if you have an issue where you have to charge more than consumers are willing to pay, this may not be a good option for you. Do you have the time? And there are a lot of opportunities. So especially if you are doing state, federally, or TA inspected meat, you can do different bundles. There are some unique marketing around the holidays that you can do. So there's a lot of opportunities to sell some of those cuts of meat that are a little bit harder to move if you are good at marketing them. So if you need to know your costs, this is kind of my plug for my farm financial planning assistance and benchmarking program. Right now it's grant funded, so it is actually free. What we do is we help you figure out your costs. We start with beginning and ending balance sheets, and then we work towards a full farm workup. We can do it for any crop type, any livestock type, and it just helps you understand what your real costs are so that you can make sure that you're setting your pricing at an appropriate level. So if you're interested in that, you can shoot me an email or Lauren an email. Any questions?
Remember, if you do have questions later on, think about something, just put it in the chat, and Courtney will probably hang around for a few minutes.
Yeah, or you can ask JJ.
Or you can ask JJ.
He does this work with me too, so he's staying around for round 2, so I can put him on the hot spot.
Oh. All right, JJ, you ready? Oh, okay, we got one question. It says, can I see the slaughter facilities type?
Yes, I can find that and put it in the chat while JJ gets his stuff loaded.
Okay.
Just one question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I'm in a hotel room because silly me, I just decided to schedule things on top of each other. And so I always don't know how this will ever go. So let me share my screen. All right. Is that the right way, Lauren?
Yes. Okay, let me go ahead and introduce our next speaker. JJ Jones is an area agricultural economics specialist for the Southeast District of the Oklahoma State University Cooperative Extension Service. He has worked in extension for more than 25 years, starting off in Tennessee and moving back to Oklahoma in 2004. He was raised on a small cattle operation in Alex, Oklahoma. He attended Oklahoma State University, where he received a bachelor's in animal science and a master's in ag economics. He works in all areas related to farm management and business planning. JJ, when you're ready.
All right, guys. So I hope everybody can hear me. When I do these type of presentations, this is always informal. If you've got a question, please just ask, and you don't bother. You're not going to interrupt me and stuff. And I'm going to say one thing, Lawrence, that I was looking on here, and the first name after your name, it says Jenna Jones. For a minute there, I thought it was my wife was watching this thing. I was like, surely she's not going to pay attention to what I say today. So, no, but my wife is Jeans, but that sure confused me for just a minute. But anyway, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about developing a marketing plan. And guys, I'm going to be real honest with you. When I do these marketing plan talks all the time, and this was probably one of the tougher ones I had to put together, because generally when I talk about marketing plans, I'm talking about a specific commodity. So I'm usually talking about cattle, I'm talking about goats, I'm talking about one specific product or commodity. This is kind of could be anything. You could be talking about developing marketing plans for rutabaga, as far as I know, because this series here just kind of encapsulates a lot of different things. And so it was a little tougher to put together for me because I can't just drill down on some of the specifics, but here we go. We're going to go ahead and try this. So the first thing I'm going to tell you, it's my belief, and I like I said, Lauren said I've been doing this for over 25 years. It's actually next April will be 30. And I truly believe that marketing is typically the last thing on a producer's mind when they're producing their products, and when it should probably be the first. Because, you know, I typically deal with livestock producers on the first thing, and some vegetables and stuff, but I truly believe that producers get what I call the field of dreams syndrome. It's if they build it, they will come. So if I grow it, if I produce it, I will have no problem selling that. And I could tell you story after story. You know, one of my favorite stories to tell is when I worked out in Tennessee, my neighbor, you know, after a year that pumpkins really didn't tank, there was a shortage on pumpkins, so pumpkin prices skyrocketed. He went out and planted 3 acres of pumpkins. Now, 3 acres doesn't sound like a whole lot, but any of you who ever planted pumpkins know that 3 acres is a lot of pumpkins. I kept asking him, I go, what about marketing and selling them? And he just made the assumption that there would be somebody there to buy his product when he was done. Well, his product was ready. That year, after a bad crop of pumpkins, everybody had pumpkins. There was a glut of pumpkins out there. Nobody came to buy his pumpkins. He had 3 acres of pumpkins and nowhere to sell them. And so I always tell people, I said, think about marketing. I thought, you know, you should, the minute he had those pumpkins planted in the ground, he should have been talking to somebody about possibly buying them. But, and again, lesson learned, and he never planted pumpkins again after that. So I think that marketing is just something that we just don't want to think about. And really, you know, going into this, I like to use this saying too, not having a plan is still a plan. It's just not a very good one. And then I found this meme online, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And so, you know, that's just thing, even if you don't have a plan there, it's a plan, it's just not a very good one. So we're going to dive down and talk about marketing, you know, and stuff. And so here's my kind of the talking points I'm going to talk about today. First of all, just what is a marketing plan? You know, what I'm basically assuming, guys, is that everybody here is what I do is doing a kind of a more non-traditional type marketing situation. A traditional marketing plan is simply we produce the animals, or we produce, you know, animals is the easiest one example. I produce the animals, I take them to the livestock market, I drop them off, I collect my paycheck, I go home. That's what a lot of us producers, that's what we grew up with, what we're used to, it's what we're comfortable with. The non-traditional stuff actually makes us to be marketing people. And we're going to talk about the non-traditional side a little bit more. But everything I tell people, every producer needs a plan. And when I say every producer needs a plan, you know, I'm going to kind of drive that home tonight, is everyone needs a plan, and you can have more than one plan, and probably will need more than one plan, because if you sell more than one product, and I've got some examples as I go along, if you sell more than one product, you need to have a plan for each of those products. The next thing, you know, I kind of came up with this. I don't know, Lauren, golly, I can't remember how long ago I kind of came up with this, the 4 W's of marketing, and that's the what, who, where, and when. And I think if you can answer these questions, the what, the who, the where, and the when, you're well on your way to creating you a successful marketing plan. And we're going to talk in detail of each one of those W's. And then the one thing that I'm a real big proponent of is that when you develop a plan, you've got to match it up with your production. And so when we talk about agriculture, you know, it's not year round. We don't, you know, Courtney just did a great job of talking about storage and stuff like that. So if it's a storable product, you might have product year round, but really and truthfully, we don't want to hold on to that product. Every day we hold on to it, it costs us money. So we need to match up our marketing plans, our, you know, marketing with our production schedules. And then the other thing that I always tell people, your plans have to be flexible. Things happen. I can't say the word that I always tell my boys is, but things happen. And usually when they happen, we need to be flexible, be able to shift and go. And we need to be ready and prepared to be flexible in our marketing plans. And those are the kind of things I'm going to talk about tonight. and kind of hit on. And some of this is pretty elementary, but I think some of this is really kind of drives the point home of what you should consider for whatever you're going to plan to sell. So why are some ventures not successful? You know, what have I seen? Not only what have I seen, I can relate back to some of my own. I hate to call them train wrecks. They wasn't really train wrecks, but some of my own ventures that just really wasn't very successful and what went wrong. So I think personally, marketing is not hard. It's just different. It's something that as a person my age and grew up in agriculture my entire life, I just wasn't used to it. I just didn't understand it. Again, I'm the field of dreams. I raised my livestock. I took them to the livestock market. I dropped them off. I collected my paycheck. So I think every producer knows how to produce what they sell very, very well, but they can struggle on this. And really, truthfully, some of us are just not good at it. That's where I fall in. I raised a product not long ago, and I thought, I still feel like I did a really good job of raising this product. And I'm the type of person that I will talk to anybody and everybody. Just ask my wife and my children. They always accuse me of that. I don't mind talking to people, don't mind visiting people, but trying to sell something to someone is just not my forte. It's just hard for me to convince people why my product is why they should buy it. I can tell the attributes of it and stuff, but I'm just not that marketing person. And I don't enjoy it that well. I mean, again, and I failed at that, and therefore I no longer do that venture. And then sometimes we just assume the product will sell itself. I have a new kind of, my wife calls it hobby. She asked me the other day how are my pets? I've got 2 beehives. Everybody tells me that no problem, you're gonna sell all the honey you can sell. I don't want to assume that I'm going to sell everything I produce. I think that's a bad flaw in a plan, is to assume that product will sell itself, and that we are going to have to do some work. I also think producers fail to know their clientele. Just because you like your product and you think your product is very good and, nutritious and everything in the world that you think your product is, doesn't mean your customers will. You have to match up what your customers or who you're trying to sell to, what they want, or find people who want what you're trying to sell. And again, that's kind of a rub sometimes and some kind of difficult. And Courtney did a really good job, and I've listened to her give her that talk she gave today a bunch of times, and I agree with her 100%. I don't think producers consider all the cost and time required for this job and for marketing. Again, marketing is extra. It's something we're going to do above production. So, I go out, I'm raising these bees along with a bunch of other things that I'm doing out there. Now I got to go spend time and market this. And how much is that going to take? And do I have the time? Do I want to spend that kind of time? And that is a cost. And then, marketing this stuff is not free. The free things we do to market stuff usually is worth exactly what you pay for it, zero. So, there's cost to consider, when we talk about marketing. Then I don't think producers do a good job of considering that. And when I say that, that kind of rolls into the bottom line. So I've given you 3 or 4 slides now, Lauren. I can't even remember how many I've gone through now here lately. Now I've get to the we're going to start the presentation. What is marketing? And I thought about this just a little bit, and I thought, okay, what do I need to, let's explain, let's talk about marketing. Let's break it down. So I broke out the old Webster's dictionary, or actually, Courtney, you'll love this, the MIT Dictionary of Economics, and just looked up marketing, what it is. And the definition I thought was really, really well. It says marketing is activities a company undertakes to promote the buying or selling of a product or service. Okay, let's break that down just a little bit. Activities. What does that mean? That implies that some action is required. It's not going to sell itself. What that action is, you have to figure it out. And also, you notice that word, it doesn't say activity, it says activities. It's plural. More than one action probably is going to be required. I'm not saying there aren't home runs hit, very easily, but again, I don't want to make that assumption. The next word, undertakes. Again, this implies that whoever is trying to market this product, they're going to do it. It's not going to magically appear. It's not going to. I kind of remember the fable about the shoemaker and the elves come in and made the shoes. That's not going to happen to us. We're going to have to do this ourselves, and to make this work. The other word up there is promote. That's probably where, I felt, I'm not a very good promoter. I can tell you what my product is. I can tell you the virtues of it and stuff, but promoting it, telling you why it is what it is and why it's good, why it's the best, I'm just not that good at it. And so again, you have to further that progress. And how good are you at doing that? And then I put down there on there, convince. Why should I buy the product that you're trying to sell? Okay. Now, I'm not the example to use when you're trying to convince me. Lauren will tell you I'm pretty cynical. I'm also pretty frugal. To me, I like being frugal. My wife will tell you that's, I say I'm frugal. My wife calls me cheap. Okay. So it's really hard to convince me to pay good money, my good hard extension salary dollars, to buy your product. And so, how much time are you willing to spend to convince the consumers about your product? So let's talk a little bit about this, and let's dive a little deeper. Let's talk about activities. And this, as a person of my age, this is where I struggle just a little bit because, okay, what can I do to market my product? I'm used to old school advertising, newspapers, radio, TV. That's what kind of I think about today. But that's not all that we have today. What we have is we have social media. Okay. Now, which method are you going to use? Facebook? My kids, who are all in their 20s, tell me Facebook is for old people and not for people like them. They use Instagram now, and I didn't even list Instagram on here for their social media platform. There's also Twitter, which now, as I'm being told, is now not Twitter. It's now called X. So now I guess we're not tweeting anymore. We're Xing. This doesn't snap off the fingertips, But anyway, so we have Twitter. Something that surprises my children to no end is I watch TikTok, and I don't put nothing on TikTok, but I watch TikTok. I'm actually learning how to cook better food on TikTok, believe it or not. And so, but again, for those of you who may not know, but I'm a YouTube star with goats. And so, but do I want to make TikToks? Probably not. And so again, all these things are things that we can do, activities we can do, but am I willing to do it? And so personally, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around advertising or marketing through these products because I only use one of these. And really, I'm a lurker on these. I don't post or do anything on these things. I just lurk. I just read them and stuff. And so the other thing that I've learned about social media, to be very successful in any of this requires a certain frequency. And once a month is not enough. I've been told by experts, minimum once a week, probably more like 3 to 5 times a week is what you have to require to really reach an audience. Again, that takes all time and effort. So, and then word of mouth, this is probably one of the best ways to do it, but that requires time. You have to build that repertoire with your clientele and stuff, but that's easier. That's an easier one to perform. All we got to do is make our customers happy. So, and there are probably a lot more traditional methods that I haven't mentioned because I just really truthfully, like I sat there and thought about this. There's no way I'm going to get them all. And you've got to find those methods that work for you and your clientele. And that's the kind of thing. What activities, what can you do? Can you perform that reach the clientele that you're trying to reach? So that's what you have to figure out. So let's get into the 4 W's. And the first one that I talk about, the first W is, what do you intend to market? Okay, you need to figure out, what are you selling? So I got up there specifically, what do you want to sell? You tell me, I'm going to sell vegetables. What kind of vegetables are you going to sell? I always tell people, be specific. Squash, that's better. Even better would be yellow straight neck squash, yellow crooked neck squash, zucchini squash, butternut squash. I could go on and on and on. Be specific. Figure out what you are specifically trying to sell. Okay, that's going to help you with your marketing. Now, the other thing that I always tell people, and this is, very important, what have you done or what have you created that makes your product superior or worthwhile? Again, it's a little difficult if we're doing something that everybody else is doing. So I told you the pumpkin story earlier. So what I did for my neighbors, I went out and I picked the pumpkins, went to a street corner with my little trailer full of pumpkins and undercut the market. That's the only way I could sell them. Pissed off all the pumpkin growers in that market for that year, but I sold part of his pumpkins for him. But I had done nothing to create or superior, so I had to undercut the market to be worthwhile. So again, identify what you are selling and or helps you identify who and where. The next two questions. So if you identify what, it helps you identify the who and the where, and that's very important. So what is the selling price of your product? Again, Courtney did a really good job talking about this. And then selling price, you have to cover all your costs of production and marketing. Okay, so that's something to figure out. And then again, I'll nail this, hit this nail lots times. You will need to have a plan for every product that you intend to sell. So let's go back to what is special about your product. Again, I deal mostly with livestock producers, and they always, want to complain about the price they receive. And so I always ask, well, what was special? Why did you deserve the top of the market with your animals? If you can't answer that question, you probably didn't deserve it. So the same thing goes with any other product. What is special? Why do people want your product? So, again, locally grown, locally produced, special production practices. Is it all natural, organic? Did you pet and rub on this animal every day? Did you, what are you doing special that other people are going to like and going to pay you money because you did that? Why is it important to the consumer? Again, I told you, I'm not the type of consumer you're going to try to reach. Okay, because I'm very frugal with my dollars, so I really don't care if it's locally grown. My selling point is price point. Or is it worth my dollars? So again, why is it important to the consumer? Locally grown, if it's important, that's something you have to figure out. And then again, why should I pay that price that you're asking? Those are all questions that you kind of need to ask yourself when you go to market your stuff and price your product. So let's talk about the second W. Who will buy your product? Identifying your market. Are they local? Where do they, is what you're trying to sell? Is there similar products out there now? Where are they selling these? So I always talk about people, well, I'm back up. So, when I talk about are they local stuff, again, I live out in the country. I know a lot of people that were trying to sell eggs. This is before the pandemic and egg prices went out outrageously priced. But before the pandemic, everybody and their dog in the country had eggs for sale at $2 a dozen. I guarantee if you did a budget, Courtney, they're costing you more than $2 a dozen to produce them. I did the budget, and so therefore I didn't sell too many eggs. Again, so the people that wanted the $4 or $5 a dozen eggs weren't going to get them local. They had to go to a more urban setting to a clientele that wanted it, willing to pay that price. And there wasn't a whole lot of those other products around. So again, something to consider when you're going to markets. Once you know who wants your product, then you can identify where. Again, we're going to kind of go down these W's a little bit, and then also a little bit how you can sell it. Every little demographic's a little different. You got to figure out how every demographic reacts and how they sell it. Again, trying to be successful, maybe a little bit of overthinking in some of this, but I don't think you can overthink this marketing thing too much. Again, identifying your clientele helps you determine your selling price. I put in a couple examples here. Pinto, for those of you who remember what a Pinto car was versus a Cadillac. For those of you who don't remember, those cars are the cars that exploded when you rear-ended them, and they were very, very cheap. But I also put in Walmart versus Nordstrom. And trust me, I never even walked into a Nordstrom. So, but I know, because the reason why I haven't, because I know it's a very expensive store. And so I don't go in there. But I was talking to a producer one time, and he was talking about what he was selling his meat products for, which was not very, in my opinion, very cost effective or very inexpensive for people, everyday people to buy. And I kind of made the comment about, well, Walmart, or, I can go to Walmart and beat that. He looked at me point blank in the face and said, I am not selling to the Walmart crowd. And he knew that. So he knew that he wasn't marketing to that crowd. So therefore he focused his marketing on that crowd that he was trying to do. And then again, it helps you identify what activities you're going to do, to reach your clientele or the people you're going to sell to. Again, it's all pretty easy. It's pretty common sense, but sometimes things we just overlook. Let's go to the third W. Where are you going to sell this? Not every location is a good location. I'll use this: farmers markets. Ada, Oklahoma has a farmers market. And for those of you who might know, Ada versus Oklahoma City's farmers market, where do you think the better prices they're getting? I can almost guarantee you I can get a better price or a higher price at the Oklahoma City farmers markets than I can at the Ada market. The Ada market's not known for being a very good market or having a lot of different products throughout the whole year. Oklahoma City markets, again, lots of different vendors, lots of different products, so lots of traffic. And so, probably a better location. But again, is Oklahoma City a good location for you? Can you get there? What's the cost? Do you have the time? Different things like that. But again, you have to determine what location is best for you in your marketing. Again, urban versus rural is very important. Urban people are usually willing to spend a little more money than what rural people are. Although rural people do have some disposable income as well. I don't want to ignore them, but as a general rule, urbans will pay more. Farmers market versus off the farm. I'd much rather sell off the farm. When you start selling off the farm, the rules change. Courtney talked about some of the rules. Eggs, let's talk about eggs. Just mention, I'm not going to get into the egg thing. I can sell every egg I produce off my farm, and I'm not, there's no rules or regulations basically for how I sell it. I don't have to label the carton. I don't have to candle the eggs. I don't have to grade the eggs. I just stick them in a clean carton and give them to you. The minute I step out of my driveway, different rules apply. And so, but again, location, local, and then local versus non-local we've talked about. What are the costs? I'm glad Courtney went first. I can pick on you, Courtney. She talked about farmers markets, different fees, registration costs, getting all this stuff done. If you're going to sell market or sell beef, individual cuts, there is some cost, to get it inspected. It's a little bit higher. You got to go to a different plant, usually a little more expensive plant to get it stuff done on. These are all costs that you're going to have to recoup. We're getting to the fourth W. When do you want to, when do you want to sell this? Again, most ag products are seasonal. So you and this is where I get into match marketing up with production is very important. So again, you got to kind of match your marketing up to your, to when you're going to do your production stuff. And then also, can you extend the shelf life of your product? And does this change the rules? With Courtney's custom exempt, you can't extend the life of that product. They have to pick that product up when it's done at the processor. If I'm having it butchered and put into cuts, I can keep it in my freezer. It doesn't really change the rules other than that meat has to be inspected. Stuff like that. Can you extend it, and does it change rules? Things you have to think about. And then the other thing that I truly think that a lot of people underestimate or overestimate, or whatever word you want to use, is their demand for the product you're planning to sell when you plan to sell it. And so it's Econ 101, supply and demand. Again, ag crops. We'll use sweet corn this time. Sweet corn is an example. If everybody, if everybody produces sweet corn, it's all going to probably get mature and ready to go at the same time. So, if the supply is, very good supply, demand, it may not, that drags the price down unless demand's very, very good at the same time. These are all things that you got to kind of consider. So I'm a visual person. I like this when I talk about matching production to the marketing. And I got a goat example, and you have to forgive me. I already had this made up, so I didn't want to reinvent the wheel for something else. So when I talk to goat producers and we talk about matching marketing up with production, you typically the market for goats, for live goats, no, we're talking about live goats, the market for goats is very high or best usually in March. That's typically a high point in the market. Well, if we try to match that up to production, we back it up. Usually goats are about 100 to 120 days old when they're sold. And so that means we're going to have to kid late November, December. There's not a great deal of forage to eat between November and March. So we're having to feed them a lot of hay. Also, if I'm going to kid in November and December, that's probably one of the worst times in Oklahoma to kid out because goats hate cold weather, don't do very well when they're having kids out in that weather, and mortality could be a problem. We back up another 150 days and shoot, now we're trying to breed them in July. And guess what? If you've ever tried to breed a goat in the summertime, you'll tell you it's just very, very difficult to do. So conception rates may not be the highest. So to match our marketing plan to our production, or well, actually match production to the marketing idea of selling at the high market, we have to overcome low forage or no forage, high mortality rate in our kids, and probably low conception rate. If we can tackle those three problems, and there are solutions to those problems, if we're willing to do those solutions, then that might be a possible plan. But otherwise, we could go to this plan where now we're going to sell in August and September. That's when the market is typically going down, not the best time in the year to sell. We back up that 100 days. We're a kid in May and June. Guess what? There's plenty of summer forage available from May to August, so really don't have to feed them a great deal. Also, no weather problems as far as birthing them out in May and June, actually back it up into April. The only problem I have with summer kids, maybe growth rate may not be so good. May have to hold them a little extra longer, but still not a big problem to overcome. We back up 150 days. We're breeding in December. Again, very, very simple. Conception rate, not a very problem. So again, my marketing, my production, if now I'm trying to match my marketing up to production, because this production scheme is the average. This is what typically everybody does. And because of that, that's when a lot of goats are coming to market. The price is depressed and the market's turning downward. So we get a low price. Again, you have to determine what's best for you, what works best for you. Can you make this work? Can you make this be profitable? And time and stuff like that. This is all things you have to consider. So this is kind of my example, and I always talk about matching your production up with your marketing. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time on rules and regulations, because again, there's so many out there for so many different products. And so again, there are different rules, different regulations. And I used an example, Courtney, you're selling your beef. So, if I can sell portions, quarter, half, et cetera, with no inspections, no big deal. I just basically sell the animal, the quarter to the buyer, they go pick up the meat. No big deal. I want to sell individual cuts, ribeyes, hamburgers. I got to have it processed. Okay. Again, different rules, different regulations. I used a honey example. So I didn't use, not production wise, but just, if I sell raw honey in a jar, I haven't done anything to alter that honey. All I've done is collect it from the bees. I don't have to collect sales tax on that honey. If I've done something, I've altered it, or I used the wax and created lip balm or candles, that is a product, creation, a product created. I now have to collect sales tax on that product. Again, rules and regulations, all kinds of different things. And then Courtney mentioned this, some farmers markets have different rules, different expectations. Know what these rules and regulations are. So I'm wrapping this all up, kind of hoping, tying this all with a little bow. I think marketing is very important, and especially when we're trying to sell less conventional products. And I probably shouldn't use the word less conventional, more non-traditional, instead of it. Or maybe even a better word would be value-added products. I'm trying to add value to what I already produce And so I want to sell that maybe directly to consumers. Marketing is going to be very key, very important, more important than just the base product itself. It's going to require more time, more effort, more cost, point blank. And there's some of y'all is going to be better at it than some of us. You got to determine the what, the who, the when, and the where. I think if you get those 4 questions answered, everything else is going to be a lot easier in the, when you go to do your marketing plans. Again, match up your marketing plan with production. We're dealing with ag products, so there are usually production. Again, honey there's a season for it, and instead of harvesting my honey in June, July, I put mine in the freezer. I'm gonna harvest it this fall when everybody else is sold out of their honey. And so,
except for I did the exact same thing, JJ.
Yeah, see, Courtney's following my marketing plan. So
I did it last year. That was my marketing plan, the Christmas honey baskets. Yeah,
there you go. It's Christmas presents. So again, you got to kind of match things up with it and think about this, what you're going to do. Again, I think you got to have a plan for every product you plan to sell. I talked about honey. I plan to do nothing with the wax. I am not making lip balm. I'm not making candles. My wife is not crafty enough to do that either. So I don't have to worry about that. But if you do, again, I got to have a plan for that. Where am I going to sell candles and lip balm and whatever else they make out of beeswax? Again, know the rules. Very important. I like Courtney, when she said, she goes, I know there's people out there not doing this, not following the rules. And I'm not saying if you don't follow the rules, you may never get caught. You may never, but my luck and me, I would be the person that gets caught selling the eggs to my neighbor, and they put me in the not in the jail, under the jail, and fine me $50,000. That would be my luck. And they would want to make an example out of somebody, and that would be me. I'm not telling you to know the rules. I say know the rules for your own protection. Again, you don't want to be the person that gets made the example of. That's all I've got. I'm not even sure how long I took. This is my contact information. If you ever got any questions, and yes, even if you're in Texas or anywhere else, I may not be able to drive down and visit with you, but with today's virtual world, that's not a problem. Let me know. I'll do my level best to answer the questions for you and help you out. The thing that I like about my answers to your questions is I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to I'm trying to give you information to help you succeed. So with that, Lauren, if there's any questions, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and see if there are. Any questions anybody got?
Yeah, Courtney had mentioned that there's liability insurance that we need to have for, like, even if we have them inspected, like whether it's federal or state, we still need to be covered if they got sick.
You don't have to, but that's a really cheap insurance blanket, be honest with you. So this happened. If you sell somebody a ribeye and they go home, and let's just say they are the reason why it's contaminated, but they get sick, they're still going to sue you. The lawyer's going to sue the farmer's market, you, and everybody else that's involved. It's better to have that $1 million liability policy, because that way that they don't come after you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, do you have to have it? No. And I know lots of people that don't. But I'll be honest with you, that food liability insurance, I don't think is all that costly. I think it's fairly inexpensive. And again, inexpensive is in the eye of the beholder. But so
is it just like with your homeowner's policy, or is there certain ag companies that you need?
No, you would have to go to let's just use Farm Bureau, and I'm not putting them over anybody else. That's the first name come to mind. They might sell it, but it's going to be different than your homeowner's insurance. It'll be a whole different standalone insurance product. Lauren may have had. Did you buy that? Have you ever bought that stuff, Lauren? I know
we mentioned one specifically in one of our B fact sheets. I can pull it up real quick. It's called FLIP, Flip Insurance, and it's specifically geared for farmers market and direct to consumer sales. And I want to say it's like $30. Like, it's pretty inexpensive. I sell products to consumers. I don't have insurance. It's probably not good, right? But again, do as I say, not as I do. If I were selling meat products, like you can get botulism from honey, but that's pretty rare. So if I were selling meat products, or eggs, I think I'd be really, really serious about looking into some insurance options. I can pull it up real quick and put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?